Well, let's be real for a second. What do you think is going to happen to these blue areas when the collapse or the disarray happens, or the
it's a red tribe talking point that the blue areas, they're all fashion designers and accountants, and there's a totally fake economy there, and these people don't produce anything, whereas out here in steel and corn country, this is the real world. And I understand the emotions behind that, that the blue tribe often doesn't see the red tribe virtues. They don't appreciate hard work and diligence and, breaking bones and getting sweaty and all these other things. And so you want to believe that, they're effete losers, bug men living in pods. And my books, by the way, start out, I think there's, on the dedication page that, this is to Robert Heinlein, who taught us not to be bug men living in pods. But the blue areas do huge amounts of useful things, and we're not going to, if there were a civil war, we're not going to surround Boston for a second time and starve them out, because they export intellectual property and they've got a port, and all of the food they ever want to buy is going to come in from the world. So I'm not predicting a collapse, and I'm not predicting civil war. I think a peaceful divorce would be great, and I think both sides would do okay afterwards.
In a peaceful divorce, it wouldn't be both sides. There's no real way to split the country in two. Mm-hmm. But there could be 5 regions. Mm-hmm. And then there could be a bunch of different regions. Right. But where do California produces a massive amount of food mm-hmm. for the country and for the world. Mm-hmm. But I'm not convinced that the farmers in Tulare, who are mostly Trump-supporting Republicans, mm-hmm. are going to be like, sure, I'll give my food to these hippie lunatics in the cities.
Right. Well, give or are subject to a regulation by. I mean, if
conquered.
Yeah. I don't know that either side really has the manpower to do that. I think that we are going to see, if there is a great divorce, which I don't think is super likely, but I hope we do. If there is a great divorce, I think it's going to happen.
China comes in, man.
Well, so that's the other thing. If you look at the U.S. Revolution, the U.S. Revolution only succeeded because there was a great power war going on where right. England didn't have the ability to fight us because they were busy fighting France. And if you look at how the U.S. always plays divide and conquer, we're always backing one faction overseas, this Syrian, rebel group versus the other one. And so, I think China is going to get old before it gets rich. So they are most dangerous for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. But I don't think that the future of the world is Chinese. But if the U.S. got into severe problems, then absolutely China would be funneling money and weapons.
Yeah, and you would see one faction in the United States side with China to win. That would be crazy, just like the revolution, man.
I look at these regions they've in this poll where it's mm-hmm. like you got the Pacific region, the Heartland, the South, the Northeast.
There was a great book by Joel Guru 30 years ago called The 9 Nations of North America that I recommend on this topic.
But I think the Northeast might be the most at risk. Look, I can look at the Heartland and be like, mm-hmm. there's a lot of corn there. Mm-hmm. I can look at the Pacific and be like, California produces a ton of food. Mm-hmm. I look at the South and I'm like, also lots of farmland and fertile areas.
The mountains impossible to take.
Northeast,
how could you invade the mountains?
What does the Northeast have? Crabs?
The Northeast has ports. I mean, if you go to Whole Foods in Cambridge, Massachusetts right now, where is that food coming from? I'm sure some of it is coming from Vermont, but a lot of it's coming from Chile or Brazil.
Let's say the Northeast was just, by itself.
Okay.
What does it have to offer for its ports to function?
Lumber?
Crab?
Lumber? A lot of lumber.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
what is New Hampshire going to
get? What do we export? We've got a lot of rocks. New Hampshire, I think its leading industries are things like, healthcare administration. Oh. And, I don't want to work in that industry. I'd rather do what I do. But again, this gets to the red tribe belief that that's not real work. It's all make work and there's no reason for it to exist. And I'm going to go with sort of a Chesterton fence that, this exists and I assume there's a good reason for it. They're presumably delivering value to someone.
There are many jobs that should not exist but are forced to.
There's a great essay, but bull jobs, and I don't know if you say it. And I think I do agree with that. So I'm not going to contradict myself.
I thought about this for a long time. Insurance salesmen. Mm-hmm. No offense if you sell insurance. But for the most part, people just go online and automatically get their service. McDonald's, fast food restaurants, mm-hmm. they're just replacing people with kiosks. Mm-hmm. And so what I think is happening is that one thing I've talked about this for since I was a teenager. The struggle of capitalism in a technological revolution is and this is really obvious for a lot of people, that when you have an industrialization, a lot of jobs get washed away. Mm-hmm. But in our current system, we don't just give people stuff. The challenge there is if one person has to work to help the society survive, they will not tolerate very likely if other people are not working and getting equal access to resources.
Right.
So long as there are people who need to make food, giving free food to other people is going to make people angry. In which case, that's one of the biggest challenges we have as we move forward technologically. You'll get people saying, don't take my job away. And then when someone gets their job taken away through no fault of their own, and then you get a government subsidy, then they're like, you're taking my tax dollars to pay them. With this potential breakup or great reset, they will erase all of these jobs. And they are. We see fast food restaurants struggling to hire people. How long until they all just upgrade to kiosks? Many of them probably will. And then how about this? I was at a rest station. They had an ice cream box, and it was a little robot man. And I wanted a chocolate sundae with chocolate syrup and sprinkles, and the little robot man just goes meh, 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 and then hands me the little thing. We don't need a human being to do it anymore. So this great reset, I imagine, is going to purge a ton of jobs.
To go off on a tangent about this job loss, the libertarian or free market answer is, actually automation in steel mills is great because it used to take 100 blacksmiths to do something, and you're upset that 99% of them are unemployed, but they're now going to get new jobs as machinists. And as we get rid of the sort of
but that's not true. Somebody who was mining coal can't learn to code.
Right, and so I agree with you, and that's where I'm going with this thesis. It was true to some decent degree that as certain jobs went away, there were always more jobs that were brought in. But we're getting to a point where we can automate any job that requires less than a 70 IQ, and then an 80 IQ, and a 90 IQ. And someone who happens to be born with a 90 IQ, that's no deficit of character. That's just how it is, and he's equally a human being as anyone else. But you start to get to a problem when we can automate anything under a 90 or a 95 or 100 or 105 IQ. And I do worry that we're getting to that world. Now, you were talking about the anger against welfare, and there is a fair bit of anger, but on the other hand, we have, as a society, a rhetorical device, or several rhetorical devices. We have welfare for the old called Social Security, and the polite fiction is you paid into that. And you did, but you end up taking a lot more out of it than you put in. And we have another polite fiction, which is disability. And the fiction there is you can't work, so a decent society helps you. And there are some people who are truly disabled. There was a good article in The Atlantic, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years ago, talking about how disability is kind of a different form of welfare, where if you go to the right doctor and say the right things, where there are unfalsifiable statements like, my back hurts, then you get it. And so, all societies have white lies they tell themselves, and I wonder if disability is ours to deal with the fact that cognitive things are being priced out.
Let's think about that in the context of the Great Reset or a Great Divorce within this country. How will people in cities get access to food from farmers? If right now what we're seeing is they're doing this unemployment thing. They've been doing it nonstop. They're doing child tax credits now. So a lot of people who aren't working are getting money. That means for the farmer who's growing corn or wheat or whatever, and they go to sell it, they do a lot of work. They have to. You can't just snap your fingers and make that stuff. It's
right.
It's
no, that's hard work.
But the people,
you don't just poke a hole in the ground and drop a seed in. It was like Como or something.
Right. But the people in the cities, they're handed money, and they walk to you and they get your labor effectively for free.
Right.
How that's I can't imagine that's sustainable.
Yeah.
The only way that actually keeps sustaining itself is that the people doing the work don't know that people who aren't doing work are as long as they don't know that's happening, but they do know it's happening.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, going back to that, as you mentioned, the what did you call it, a red state belief or the
red state, red tribe,
red tribe belief. I'll tell you this, man. I know a lot of people live in cities. You put them in the middle of the woods, it's over.
So this ties into a prepping thing where, I sometimes flip through prepping magazines when I'm at the bookstore having a coffee, which I do, once a week or so. Or someone will forward me something off of a prepping forum. And people like this idea that, I'm going to buy a can of survival seeds. Or my plan when the system collapses, I'm going to bug out and I'm going to find an abandoned farm and I'll just start farming. And, speaking to my own experience, my wife and I have been on the farm for about 8 years, and we have been working, hugely hard, on the order of, all of Saturday, all of Sunday, weeding and chainsawing down trees and converting pasture and stretching fences. And we've also brought in pros to help us with some of this, like, fencing and other stuff. And there's so much equipment and there's so much specialized knowledge, which is why the books are so thick, where, I learned that, in this pasture, I want to grow hay so that I can feed sheep so that I can get food from that. But before I can grow hay, I've got to kill off the poison ivy, which means that I need to put down 2,4-D and 3,6-D at a certain application rate. And just to finish real quickly, the idea that you're going to wander out with a can of survival seeds as civilization is collapsing and, feed yourself is absolutely insane. Homesteading is a viable approach, but, it's a 10-year plan.
What's the, for tomatoes? how long out of the year do you get viable tomatoes?
Right, absolutely. So, if you plant all of your tomatoes at once, all of your tomato harvest is going to come in over a course of 2 weeks. Now, you
That's
can
not
stagger
fun.
that by planting tomatoes week 1, week 2, week 3 in different batches. But even then, your tomatoes are going to be very, short interval, and there's not a lot of calories in tomatoes. So, again, getting the survival scenario, this is fine. Homesteading is a hobby and a lifestyle, and I'll defend it as that, but it's not a way to survive the apocalypse with no inputs. There's a huge amount of inputs of diesel fuel and fertilizer and other stuff.
Oh yeah. We have our tomatoes. I would say that we had 4 standard tomato plants and 1 cherry tomato. The cherry tomatoes, easy. I walk outside, we pick them all, we walk in, they're good to go. The regular tomatoes, extremely difficult. The bugs get them.
Yep.
And they a lot of rot. Some of them turns black.
And there's all sorts of details. Like if you want to save the seeds from tomatoes, tomatoes are tricky because there is a sort of gel-like coating on the seeds, and you have to let the seeds sit in the gel and rot for a week or 2, and then wash them off, and then preserve the seeds. And this is another thing that if you don't know this stuff, you're just going to make an absolute hash of it.
Yeah. So, we have a garden, and the funny thing is we get like baseball bat size zucchini, and over the course of the past 2 weeks, it's like, we can't eat all this. We set up a garden, but we grew a whole bunch. All the tomatoes come around the same time.
Yep.
And then we're like, what are we going to do?
Right.
Make a sauce, I guess?
Preservation technology is huge, and there's a whole lot of flavors that we as humans like because we sort of evolved in a semi-civilized state. We love smoked beef jerky because that's a preservation technology. We like pickles because that's a preservation technology. We like cheese because that's a preservation technology. And my hint with the zucchini, by the way, I peel my zucchini, I shred them in a food processor, I vacuum seal them, I throw them in a chest freezer, and then I mix that with ground turkey and onions and make turkey fritters all year long.
Now, what's fascinating, though, is that a lot of what you're describing is we got modern technology like freezers and refrigerators. So I'll tell you this, man. Where we are right now, we are this facility is going to be, for the most part, off the grid.
Nice.
Meaning our water is well water, and we're getting solar and batteries installed.
Nice.
We're still on the grid.
Yep.
But in the event of an absolute catastrophe, we're going to be able to be fine. We'll have to reduce a lot of our energy consumption, but actually we'll have a decent amount of power. These batteries are hefty, man.
Yep. I carried like 4,000 pounds of lead acid batteries down to my basement to build my system, so I know all about it. Yeah, they are hefty.
Well, I think we're going to have lithium.
Nice.
I'm not entirely sure.
I put mine in around 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm going to. I'm building out the solar right now, and the second battery bank is going to be lithium. So
but
great.
let's be real, man. Like people in cities stacked on top of each other, they're not going to have any of this. The power's going to go out, and the food's going to be gone. I was in New York when Sandy hit, and there were 2 guys standing outside of a bodega with like with 2x4s and a baseball bat, one person at a time. And the guy said all the refrigerator stuff is spoiled because the power was out for a couple weeks. I think.
Right.
They were like, the cans are good, everything else is spoiled. So take what you want.
Roof Korean's awesome.
Yeah, Mountain Dew is fine. All the sodas were fine, but anything perishable, gone.
Right.
So your freezers, all that stuff in the city, over.
Right. And
what are those people going to do?
Yeah, no, they are absolutely screwed. And
you're going to find them on your farm.
Well, I do have a chapter on firearms.
Well, there you go.
Right. This ties back to the idea of prepping and the power law, which is the title of one of the essays. I think it's in volume 2, where how often does New York City lose power, for a week or something? It happened, I think, back in 76 or 78 or something.
Hurricane Sandy happened.
And Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing, it seems inconceivable, but you pull back and zoom out, and you're like, no, this crap happens every 30 or 40 years, and you're going to live another 30 or 40 years. You're going to see it happen again. You're going to see all these things happen in your lifetime.
This is the craziest thing to me about when I was like last year. I'm like, hey guys, pick up these, food bins. Yeah, I got to say, it was mostly these young people. A lot of these lefties, these socialists are young. They don't have the worldly experience to have dealt with these things. Having seen Hurricane Sandy, I was like, wow, it would be great if I had one of those food bins. So I remember when I was living in New York, and I can't remember what was happening. There was some concern about another storm. I went and bought 2 things of bottled water. I was like, that's going to be important.
Yep.
They tell you in Chicago, whenever they say there's a big storm coming, you fill up your bathtub.
Yeah.
Because if the water goes bad, if lines break, if some disaster happens, you got a bunch of water in your bathtub.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing people who are older, I guess, learn. Younger people don't. But still, there is like this arrogance of many people live in cities. Like you said, they think they can grab a can of seeds and go find a farm somewhere.
Right.
I tell you, man, in the what did Noam Chomsky say? In the arena of violence, the most brutal guy wins, and that ain't us. And he was referring to leftists.
Right.
These people think that they're going to go out to a farm where they're going to find a guy who's been using a gun, a firearm, or multiple ones for practical purposes, be it hunting or dealing with rodents and stuff. And they're going to be able to walk on and just lay claim to a already built up and secured and maintained farm.
Fertilizer.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to be, is fertilizer.
Right.
I don't know if humans can be fertilizer. That's kind of...
I don't know.
I've got a chapter of composting.
Oh,
jeez. Well, we hope it doesn't come to that, honestly.
Right.
A lot of hungry people, though.
So there's another thing that I hear in prepping circles, and it's a feel-good phrase. It's not the equipment that you have that matters. It's what you know that matters. Because, equipment can be taken from you, but what you know is a resource.
Yeah.
And, if there's some guy living in a basement, in Brooklyn, and he's been reading survival forums for 6 years, and then the system collapses, and he comes out to my farm and wants to share his knowledge with me for food, I don't need any knowledge that this guy, learned from endlessly recycled blog posts. There's some ancient Greek words for different kinds of knowledge, techne and metis or something. But to really, really know something, you've got to do it, and you've got to do it ahead of time. And you're absolutely doing this with your tomatoes and your chicken. So if you lost power, you've already practiced it. So that's real knowledge. It's not something you've just
we got a couple mulberry trees, and so we made mulberry jam.
Nice.
We made we mixed wineberry and mulberry, like a wild berry. That was actually really. I'm not a big fan of mulberries.
Oh, I love them, but okay.
But when I mix them with the wineberries, it was really good. And the wineberries alone, I think the combination. But anyway, digress. Do you know how many calories, you probably do, are in 10 mulberries?
I'm guessing that it rounds to 0, like 10.
6.
Okay, all right.
6. Yeah, Ian nailed it last time. He was like,
man.
6. I'm like,
Nice.
how did you know that? But 10.
Uh-huh.
Wow, that's a small handful of berries you're going to shove in your mouth. 6 calories.
Right.
You will not, there's no amount of mulberry you're going to eat to sustain yourself for even a few hours.
Right.
And so, naturally occurring fruits and stuff, people don't realize. I'll tell you this story. And this plays into exactly what I'm saying. I had friends during Occupy Wall Street, got granted farmland. Mm-hmm. How long do you think, let me ask you, how long do you think they made it?
So they went out there and tried to start farming from scratch?
They said, we don't want to be on the grid. We're tired of contributing to this machine of pollution and climate change. So we're going to the farm to live sustainably.
3 days, a week?
2 weeks.
Okay,
2 weeks.
well.
I'm impressed. Most people say like a couple months.
No.
A few days. You didn't even give them the benefit of the doubt. 2 weeks.
Okay.
You know what they realized? I asked my friend. She was like, I was like, why'd you come back? She was like, because I'd wake up at 6 a.m. to work, go to bed at midnight.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah? What did you think farming was? When you are actually trying to sustain yourself, you never stop working.
Right. And this gets into, people have said, to me, oh, if we had a collapse, I bet you'd love it. Like, no, man. Right now, it's a very, very hard hobby that I do on the weekends with lots of diesel fuel coming in from outside. If that diesel fuel went away and, I tried to make a producer gas still using old FEMA plans and started logging trees to make producer gas to do stuff, it's better than starving to death, but that's hard work.
But you know what I did this morning? I went out and I grabbed some fresh jalapenos and a poblano and some cherry tomatoes. And then I went to the chicken coop and I got a couple of eggs. And so one of our chickens is, I guess she's young, so she's doing double eggs. Like they're twice as big. They're massive.
Right.
And I would say, to be fair, 99% of my breakfast was completely homegrown.
Yeah.
But I threw in some garlic powder.
And people like to say, and it's so much healthier. I'm not sure it is healthier, but man, it's so much more satisfying, isn't it? That's just amazing. We're like, this all came from here.
To be honest, I'm not a big fan of like throwing peppers in egg. Like if I went to a restaurant, I'd be like, give me the bacon and the eggs with extra cheese on top. But today I had cherry tomatoes with fresh cut jalapenos, poblano on eggs, and it tasted so good.
Nice. That is one of the most satisfying things. And we've done all sorts of stuff. We've made corn fritters. We've made maple syrup creme brulee from maple trees that we've tapped, and I boil down the sap and make my own maple syrup. I push back on homesteaders who say everything tastes better. Like, no, some food at, Whole Foods in the supermarkets tastes really good. The one thing that comes from the farm that's just absolutely amazing is homemade bacon. And, I'm not going to say it's 10% better, it's 20% better. Homemade bacon is like literally 10 times better. Like, you just don't want store-made stuff after that.
We got farms around here. And so we have gotten fresh bacon,
Nice.
and it is indescribable.
Yeah.
Right, like I don't even want the store-bought stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's a pale imitation. It's like turkey bacon or something.
It's like turkey bacon.
Yeah. And if I can plug my own book again,
Oh, yeah.
I've got tons of details on how to make your own bacon from scratch, and you can do it even living on the suburbs. I started
From
making my own.
scratch? Is it just take pig, cut
Well,
pig?
it does, yeah. I mean, the ingredients say, you need, salt, man, and you need, and you need pig, and for pig, see page 458. But you can practice a bunch of this stuff living in the suburbs. You can buy a whole pork belly from the butcher and do it at home.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.